burning too much cash too quickly. Having a good idea is not enough.
You probably know how to handle, your cash flow planning and how to scale.
We gave everything we had, and this product never saw the light of the day. Failing fast is the only way to progress.
Hello to all listeners. We're here in London, kicking off the new season of the Curiosity Code podcast. Today, we're getting into the real challenges behind growing fintechs, why so many digital transformations miss the mark, and what happens when messy data and GenAI collide inside financial markets. With us is Stephane Malrait, board advisor to fintechs like FICC and Neptune Networks, and former senior executive at JPMorgan, Societe Generale, and ING, where he led innovation, trading, market structure, and digital transformation. Stephane's seen it all, how fintech scale smart, how bad data can kill a strategy, and how GenAI is already shaking up the future of finance. Stephane, welcome to the Curiosity Code. It's great to have you here in London.
Thank you, Alex. Thank you for inviting me. I'm glad to be here with you today.
Let's dive in. I have so many interesting questions that I'd like to talk about today. And I'd like to start with your role as an investor and board member, and see if you know any internal signals not seen on the pitch decks that tells you whether startup is building a true company or is just a clever feature.
Yes, of course. Thank you for this question. I think what is important is that the way we invest into company from a banking point of view was mainly because what we found is you found a lot of great ideas in the market, and some people come with experience, they see a gap and they want to solve that gap, to solve that problem. And a lot of time, because they are early stage startup, you have to help them to grow. Mm-hmm. And when we realize that, we'll say, well, there is different way you can help them to grow. Either you become an investor, so you give them money so they can survive, or you give them data, for example, mm-hmm. so they can prove their hypothesis through the data that the bank has, or you become their clients. And a lot of time it was the three of them, or we started by wanting to become the client. But because of that, and they were at stage, we gave them data, and because we like them, we said, well, let's invest in you because we will help you to grow. And so I think it's very important from your question, because what I found is having a good idea is not enough. And we made this mistake many times. I was part of what you call the innovation team on the bank side, and you can find a lot of people with great ideas. Right. And that's what the pitch deck is going to be about. A lot of the time, they explain the problem statement and how they want to solve this problem. And it's fine, but it's not enough. And we had a lot of great ideas within the bank as well of things we wanted to change and stuff. So if the two match was that, at least we tick the first box. The second thing that we looked at is more the team itself, the fintech team, how they are organized, who are the founders, what is their background, mm-hmm. do they know enough about the subject matter, do they bring people within their team? So not everyone in the team needs to be the expert on the subject, but at least they bring different things. So you may have a team of 5 people. The CEO may come from a market experience in a bank. He knows what is broken, what needs to be fixed. He find a great CTO who help him from the technology side, who know what are the new tech who can bring at a lower cost as a solution. And then they may have somebody more on the marketing side or the development side to help them to shape. So the role of the team for us was critical to say, yes, you have a good idea. Do you have a great team? So that was the second check. The third check is really to try to say, even if you have a good team and a good idea, do you know how to execute? And I think this one is probably one of the hardest one to have and to test. And this I saw many times. Somebody came, was a managing director at a bank, had a big job, etc. Go to a fintech companies, bring good people, but they never executed themselves, right? They were head of 600 people, and within those organizations, they will have people, executing for them. When you when you are in a startup mode and you only have 5, you cannot delegate everything right, to the pyramid because there's nobody else.
Yeah, usually do most of things yourself in the early days.
Exactly. So you have to have more experience on how to make difficult choice. How do you execute a strategy? How do you fail and go back up? How do you pivot? So that's really the 3 things we look at, the idea, the team, and the experience behind it on execution. And if they have those 3, a lot of the time they have 2 out of 3. So we had to take a risk. But if they have those 3, then for us it was a great way to say, okay, those guys, they know what they are doing. They know the problems that they are trying to solve, and they did it before, so they know how to execute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the execution part is very insightful, at least for me, hopefully for the listeners as well.
Yes.
How do you... When I was listening to you, I found that first point, whether you have the experience, and usually you coming from the banking industry and maybe a manager, running a department or whatever. And then I find that the execution skill and that kind of contradict to each other. How do you kind of measure the execution skill, or you have to trust your instincts?
And I think that's where you can partner, right? So the guy who understands the business and the problem statement may not be a startup entrepreneur himself from the past, right? He's moving from a bank who have 20,000 employees to a company with 5 employees.
Right.
So he will not have that execution, but he can find someone to work with him who have
an ops person.
Yeah. Or was on the Fintech world to create something already, was successful and want to do the next big things. And that's why I start to work like magic, because everybody brings something very strong to the table, but from a different angle. And they can work well together and execute on those strategies.
Let's talk about scaling, because you help to scale lots of fintech startups. What's the hidden danger that you've seen happening across, fintechs that you've seen scaling fast? What are hidden bits that teams are falling into?
Yeah, and I think there is more tips I can from my own experience, and we suffered a lot. We learn ourselves the same way, because we found some companies that we were trying to create in-house, and then to try to scale up externally to the market. We were working with fintech company from the outside that we were bringing to the bank and try to help them to scale up within the bank. So, and what we found is probably a lot of them failed, and I think it's when you are in an innovating mindset, that's how you learn, right? It's not all projects will succeed, but you have to learn how to pivot and stuff like that. So come to mind some of the mistake I saw in people who failed to scale was, one, they had a good idea, they had a good product, they found good investor to support them, but they were burning too much cash too fast. Right, so on the pitch deck, a lot of times they will say, within the next 3 years, this is how we are going to go. Everybody knows it's never going to happen that way, right? It's not going to take 3 years. It's probably going to take 6 to 9 years to get to that point. So if you burn the cash to achieve this objective in 3 years, and you realize that you are not going to make it, then that's it. You are going to run out of money, and then you are going to fail. So that's a very common mistake that we found, is people were burning too much cash too quickly, and then they run out of money, and the investor probably say, well, you didn't prove the value of the product, so we are not going to put more. So be careful of that. It's important to have a long runway and to be able to measure your progress as you go along. And then if progress is not, and there may be good reason why the progress is not there in the first year, how to work on it to correct the path. So that's the first thing. The second thing on scaling is a lot of time you prove your value with your first client or your first two clients. But if you have to scale to 200 or 2,000 clients, it's a very different story, right? Your marketing strategy, your go-to-market strategy with all 2,000 clients, it's a very different program. And that, I found a lot of mistakes there, because you first two clients, you babysit them, you take the time to onboard them, etc. When you have to scale, you have to have a very strong process to onboard, 100 clients a month. So you have to automate that onboarding process. You have to automate the way you market. In our market, so maybe to give you a bit of background, I was on the investment bank side, not the retail bank. So it's more the professional market, where people normally they will. It's not creating Facebook or something like that, right? So their target is to have 50 to 100 clients, right? If they succeed to have 100 clients, they're doing very well, because something investment banking, it's a very specialized market. But even so, even getting 100 clients can take you 5 years. So you have to be able to prepare for that, right? If you want to penetrate the banking system, or at least the investment banking system, it's very hard to sell to a bank. It may take 18 months just to do the procurement process, right? So that's another tip for people to scale, is trying to plan in advance that it's going to take time, and that's part of your strategy to say, I want you to be my client in 2 years' time, so I have to start to speak to you today, and try to show you what I'm developing. And then probably the last example on scaling that I found is very quickly is something from your first question. We started small team of 5. People know each other very well. They work very well. They have the founding team. They are strong, passionate, etc. As soon as you scale, you are going to have to recruit external people, and you move from 5 to 25 to 100, and then you don't know anymore those people as well, or they are not as passionate as you are for the success of the company. So trying to have a good process to bring the culture of the company to a larger team is very important. And that's another issue that I found in some companies, is as soon as they scale a bit too much, then they lose those value, and then the client experience is not as good. So client number 59 will start to say, well, sorry, but when I call, nobody pick up the phone, and then the problem start to emerge.
It's very interesting, because most of the points that you covered are really applicable even to my business. And I'm not, conventional startup, I'm the service provider, right?
Yes.
And from the sales cycle, which are also very long in our business, in financial services, to challenges when we scale. So it's very relevant. Yeah. So I think back to the point about execution and execution skills being success factor to succeed in startup. I think in my mind, we can even broaden it up. It's more like execution of business, execution skills on the business management level, not only the startup, but if you ran a small or medium-sized company before, you probably know how to handle, all, your cash flow planning and how to scale the processes, how to scale operations. So it's definitely seems to be a factor. Coming back to the first question, right?
And it's hard. I think a lot of people don't realize, and maybe that's a good thing, I don't know, when they start a fintech companies, they don't realize at that point of time how hard it's going to be the first 2-3 years, how much effort they have to put. Compared to a 9-to-5 job, it's a 24/7 jobs, right? And they realize that probably in year 1, say, oh my God, this is hard. And so they have to run the course, and then they will get the benefits. But the first few years are pretty hard. And we had some people who gave up because it's not for me anymore, right? I didn't realize that it was going to be that hard. So only the passionate people will succeed into that game.
My next question is about, I think it's about what we've covered so far, but a little bit different angle. So you have a team who are experts in the product that they're building, in business management, in the market where they want to launch, and they coming to you as an advisor, they raising capital, they listening to the advice. At what point, in your opinion, they should stop, listen less for the external advice and rely more on their internal instinct?
I think, it's a great question. It's a mix of both. And this, I realized, I made the mistake myself. It's the role of the board member or the advisor is very different to a role of a manager, right? The manager needs to train a team to be very effective, and he can direct them into a direction or train them. And so the advisor has to help the management team of that tech company to go to the next level. So the approach is different because you cannot really tell them what to do. You have to work with them to bring them up, and they can or don't have to take that advice because it's more about trying to help them to think. What I realized quite quickly is the hardest is the CEO. So probably you will relate to that. The CEO is very alone because the rest of the company is going to look up to him to say, like, listen, you ask us to come on this journey with you. You are the captain of the ship, So everybody, they're always going to come to you when they have problems, right? So you are the person.
That's the job.
That's the job of the CEO. So they come to you when you have problem. So the CEO is pretty alone into that field, and it's probably not your wife or girlfriend who is going to help you to solve some of those problems. So that's where the advisor will come in, because he will bring you some skills or place to listen to you and to try to say, well, why don't we try that? Why don't we try this, etc. Right? So it's not going to detect. A good advisor should not tell you, listen, you're doing it wrong, you have to do that. It's going to try to help you to say, let's think about other ways to do things, and let's try, things. Or it's help you to open doors, right? A lot of time in a board environment, or you will have more than one advisor, somebody is going to be very good to have a network of potential clients for you, where somebody else will have a network of potential tech provider who can help you because you should not build everything yourself. So how do you partner with others, etc.? So that's what you look to an advisor, is to say, what can you bring to me with your network, or with the experience that you had, or with the relationships that you build, etc. So each board member, each advisor should have a specific purpose to bring you help and to be kind of your confidant. Say, oh my God, we are running roadblock with those 3 clients in Australia. They want us to go there. We don't have the budget. How do we solve it, right? And the advisor will try to find a solution for you to help you there.
Is there such a thing as too many advisors?
Well, yes or no. I think you have your core team who is close to you, to like the regular people that are part of your board or your advisor. And I think this, you should keep it quite small, right? So people you can really open up to say, this is not going bad. And then I think on the flip side, you can have a large network of people that you can go to for specific demand.
Like experts.
Right, experts, right? To say, I want to find something on cybersecurity. I don't know, is there somebody who can help me, advise me on that, knowing the market, what are the solutions we should like, etc. So this, you may want a broad range because you may come to them only once a year or things like that. But the close relationship, it's your board. It's your 2, 3, not more advisor there, I think.
Yeah, I like the concept of seeking help from experts who've gone through this experience. So you move way faster than you could have done this alone.
Yeah, and it's impressive how, if you take it the right way, how many people are ready to help, right? I think I said it's hard. The role of fintech in the early stage is pretty hard, and you will face a lot of closed doors, in terms of new client and product and stuff like that. But you can also face some people who are ready to help because they think you have a good idea and they want you to succeed, right? And a lot of times they do it for free. If it's too regular and you call them every week, maybe they will say, okay, now you have to pay me something. But a lot of time I found that myself, and I work for tech companies. Is like, last week there was a large company we are trying to have a relationship with, and that just popped the question to them on LinkedIn, say, we are trying to solve this problem. We need to speak to you. The guy came back. He said, let's have a call tomorrow. And it works, right? And I didn't know this guy from anywhere except, mutual connection on LinkedIn. And that was it. So I think reaching out for help, it's a game changer.
Yep. Let's move on. Stephane, across your journey advising and investing, what's the most painful, expensive mistake that you can recall? And what you could have done differently if you had the chance to rewind the time? Okay,
I will give you maybe some... The thing I cannot tell. But like one mistake, this was a long time ago, etc. So it was within the bank. So it was not a startup, but a large project. Mm-hmm. My career started in technology, and I was a project manager and developing new product. And is the alignment with the sponsor or with with the people who want to buy your product. We worked on a complex pricing model application for a financial product for 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it was for the head of trading on that product. Mm-hmm. And at the end of those 2 years, when the product was ready to launch, and this was one of my first jobs, so I was very proud to work on that and to be able to do that. But the guy left the bank, mm-hmm. and somebody else came in. And it was expensive because it was a team of probably 10 to 15 people working on that for 2 years. And the new guy said, well, sorry, I don't need it. And the product was finished. And
he said, I don't need it?
Yes, because the new trader had a very different vision, different ideas. He didn't want to price the instrument the same way. Mm-hmm. And so we came with a finished product because it was just by the time the other one left, the product was finished. We are going to roll out to production. And the new guy said, well, I don't want it. And for the team and for me, it was like very painful because we gave everything we had for this product, right, to make it ready to launch. And this product never saw the light of the day. And in fact, in large companies, this happened quite a lot. This is not the only example there, but I think there must be better way to do that. In this case, I don't know what will be the better option. Maybe I didn't sell the new product well enough to that new guy, or I didn't have when I have a single point of failure into that I had one client where I should have more than one. Maybe some people who can help us into that direction, but it was painful, but it was probably one of the biggest lessons for me to not try to do that mistake again as a product manager, and to make sure, like, when we develop something, and this I learned probably in the last 5 years when I was focusing more on innovation, is you have not to be afraid to fail fast. Right, and you saw this. Maybe I should have saw some of the sign in my first project. So now in the innovation process that we had at the bank was trying to celebrate when you fail, because the faster you fail, the better you can pick up and move on. Right, if you wait too long until you fail, it's going to be harder and harder fail and more expensive mistake. And the analogy I use a lot is like, if you look at a baby trying to learn how to walk, mm-hmm. you expect the baby to fail, and he's picking up and he fell and pick up, but that's the best way for him to learn how to walk. And I think in the fintech world is the same thing. We should not be afraid to fail, and so many people are afraid on that, and they try to push, and that's why I use my example from early in my career. I see a lot of fintech who try to push their products hard and hard, and even if you start to see some signs that product is not fit for the market they are trying to get now. So maybe it's too early. The timing is not correct. Or maybe it's too expensive. Like, so it's a very well solution design, but too expensive for the problems they are trying to solve, right? But they're still trying because they believe into a product. And it's normal, right? As a CEO, as a founder on tech company, people have to have the passion and to believe that their product is the best on the market. But you have to listen to those signs to say, well, listen, maybe the market doesn't need it now, right? And this I saw something, another example where the same product, somebody created it like 5 years ago and had to switch off his company after 3 years. Somebody created now and they are the king of the world because the timing was correct. So you have to listen to those signs to be able to avoid the expensive mistake. And I think with those innovation methodologies that we have now, to try to, validate the problem you try to solve with different clients, to fight fast, to not develop the whole product day one. You do proof of concept or pilot and framing just the visualization and try to see it with people. There is a lot of tools that we didn't have like 20 years ago to be able to test your market before it's become too expensive.
I think another important aspect, coming back on your parenthood analogy with the kid, when you have your first child, everything is new to you. So you're getting really, sometimes too emotional, too unreasonable, too attached in a sense. You get the second one, okay, it's a whole different story. So my point is that when you do your first startup, first product, and I had my startup like back 10 years ago, and I remember the feeling. It's like your baby. You're getting so attached, and you cannot accept the fact that
you are making mistakes.
You make a mistake. It was wrong. Like what we call in project management sunk cost. Okay, pivot, move on, close it, move on to the next one. No, you would hold to it, and okay, I need to make it work. And I think that's what you
exactly.
saying.
And
right?
in the banking world, it's extremely hard because like I did 30 years in banking, and if you fail, you get fired. Right? That in the banking industry, only the guy who doesn't fail get a nice big bonus. The guy who fail get fired. So people coming from this industry to the fintech industry, they don't want to fail.
So failure is not an option.
Failure is not an option. You don't want to fail. When in fact, failure is, failing fast is the only way to progress and to make sure you are testing the right hypothesis. So yeah, I think it.
I'd like to chat about digital transformation. You led digital transformation at ING. In your experience, what's the real truth behind failure of digital transformations, even when companies announce as a success publicly?
Yes, and I saw a horror story in my career on digital transformation, because to some extent, like, I think this is important because the electronification of financial market has started with the internet boom in the year 2000, so 25 years ago. So it's still quite a long time to learn how to electronify our markets. But what's fascinating is the work is still not done. There's still a lot to do. There is still pocket in our industry where people are still using fax machine or emailing paper and PDF and stuff like that, where they could do everything digitally. So there's still a long way work to be done. But when I started in technology in my career, is 70% of the project were never delivered. It was the number was very high, and digital transformation is about that. How do you automate some processes within an organization, either building yourself in-house or through external help with fintech companies. So over time, I hope I became better at doing it, because we learn some tips of how to do it. So the project management activity of such a program was critical to the success of what we did at the bank. So making sure you have strong sponsor alignment, and something from my past Michael, having more than one sponsor, I have a team of people who can review the strategy, agree the strategy, and we want to go digital. And if one of them move, at least you have the other one.
Yeah.
So alignment with sponsorship is critical. Your process to review progress is critical as well. Making sure you have a governance. So we put in place a very strong governance model where we try together. So in our digital transformation program, we have a lot of different components, and each component we are doing at its own pace. And reporting what we ask them to report is their progress, but what we try to push is to ask them to report what was not going well. Something, try to learn how to fail fast. It's like, tell us what is blocking you to progress. And this was kind of new for us at the bank. Because if you report that to your management, something your management can become your advisor to say, okay, we are going to help you to unblock this issue, right? If you have like a team waiting for another team that didn't deliver what they're supposed to do, or you are waiting to sign a contract with a vendor to be able to access, how do you unblock those issues and try to use the power of the management team to say, okay, can you help us to unblock those issues? So this was extremely successful to do that. So not be afraid to escalate the issues that you have quickly enough. The other thing we did, which is, in the banking industry, you have two types of banks. You have the big bank who like to develop everything in-house. They say we have large technology team, and you have other banks who try to buy everything from the outside because they don't have. What we try to do is create a mix of both worlds to say what is critical for the banks that we should develop in-house versus what is less is not an IP of the bank, so we should buy it, and not be afraid to buy when you need to buy, and not to be afraid to develop things where you think it's a differentiation IP. So pricing methodology, maybe something you want to keep close to you versus connectivity to different exchanges is something you could buy. So trying to make those, and then not be rigid on that. So our digital transformation program was kind of a 3-year strategy. And this is like similar to a fintech, is things happen and things change. So you have to use your governance to be able to change when you need to be, and to be able to say, like, what we agreed 3 years ago is not true anymore. The market has changed. The market structure has changed. There is new trading venue coming to the market. There is new exchange is coming to the market. We have to connect to them. So be able to pivot even in a large digital transformation program, I think it's critical for the success of it. And then, it seems to work really. I think by doing those different tips and monitoring very closely the governance of that program, it managed to work out for us.
We've been talking about how banking industry is really conservative in a sense, and with long cycles, with challenges in terms of execution and delivery. And it all, in my opinion, goes down to mindset that people have been having in this industry. How do you approach that? So you want to push the innovation. You face this old mindset where data been thought as a cost center, not like a driver of opportunities and changes. How do you manage that?
This was probably one of my hardest things in like 30 years of career, because something, right, like if you think about it, how the bank work or used to work, and I work on mainly on digital transformation, electronification of market for a long time. When I started, let's say in 2000, I was in another bank, and we are trying to create the first electronic trading system for that bank. And the challenge was that even on the management side, so you have in investment banking, you have sales and trading. There are the too big powerhouse.
Yeah.
The sales talk to clients, try to get the deal done, and the trader creates the pricing methodology and the risk management activity for those transactions. So in the year 2000, the seller will say, well, I know my clients, I know exactly what they want, and if they need something, they call me. I don't need an internet guy tell me to book something online. And the trader something will say, well, I have my spreadsheet and I do my macro on my spreadsheet to price my instrument. I don't need the technology guy to automate my process. So changing the mindset for me for the last 30 years was the most difficult things to do, because you have those people who are very highly paid, who are very senior in the bank, who have a lot of experience, probably more than you, who have a relationship with top of the bank, and they don't like change. People don't like change in general, right? And you have to force them to say, oh, listen, the world is changing around us. We need to be able to. So this was true 25 years ago. It's still true today. So in my last project, it was the same thing. Some people would say, well, we don't want to change because, we already have a process in place. It seems to work. There's no reason to change. So to combat that, there was a few things we tried to do. One was that worked well for us is trying to show them that the competition is already changing, right? You don't want to be the last one trying to board on the boat. So the fear of missing out, if other people are moving, how do you do that? So lot of time, we have very few people who want to be the first one, the change leader. It's very hard to get. If you get one of those guys, fantastic. He's going to support you and drive the change. But a lot of time you have change followers who are going to wait until they talk to their friends in other banks. They're doing that, like trading digital assets in the bank, for example, is a thing like, I don't want to be the first one, but if everybody else is doing it, probably I should do it, right? So those kind of questions. So trying to get information. A lot of my work was trying to gather information on what's going on outside, like to see the trend is starting to move and people are starting to, and data is probably a big thing. AI, is another big thing, is you don't want to miss out. So when do you start to do that? Second thing is to get support from top down, from the top management. So if you have a CEO who is very visionary, it helps, because this guy is going not to be afraid to say, I'm going to shake that boat, because we have to prepare from a digital way of doing things. And sorry, guys, I know you don't want to change, but I'm going to ask you to look at that and to push it. So that was second key of success, trying to get somebody very high into the organization to believe in you. And if they do, then it helps a lot, because you can use their name, you can use them to call out some of the middle layer who is blocking you to progress. And then it's trying to prove the value as well. So that will be the first thing, and you can do it small, right? So to say, if people don't believe in using the data because they think they know their client very well, how can you prove that value? So we did, as part of those innovation projects, we did a lot of pilots where we try to work on a very specific use case with a fintech company, and we gave them like 3 weeks to prove value. Or, one of them we did from like ID generation to production in 16 weeks, where a lot of the time in the banking, to go to production in banking environment is going to take 3 to 5 years, right? In 16 weeks, we have something that we could demonstrate to salespeople in production using data, some insight of their clients that they didn't know about, right? So that was very concrete, right? And we did an assessment to say, well, how much time save this solution gave compared to, and the guy was shocked, because it was somebody who was doubtful in the beginning, but after those 16 weeks, it was I want that, because it's going to help me to go faster, better, or cheaper for my clients. So it can happen, but definitely it's hard.
From all the digital transformations that you've witnessed, in your opinion, what's the smartest, most underappreciated move that company has made, and that made all the difference?
So, well, I think it's about being curious and not afraid to. I will use an example of one project we did, which was on data and AI, where we wanted to be something a bit disruptive on the way we communicate with clients through chat systems. And we didn't know yet if a solution exists, if it could be done. And this is hard because a lot of time, as I said before, people are more trend followers and and we wanted to do that. The risk that we take and that we took in that space is that, and we had the support from the top, so we're happy to go for it and try to prove value there. And to be able to prove that value, what we did is we found a very small fintech company. I think there were like 3 people at the time working on this product. And we liked it, and we said, okay, maybe we should try to work with them. But there was a perception that it was probably the biggest risk for a large bank to bet on a 3-man small tech company. So what we did in this case was we said, okay, fine. We are going to ask, I don't know if I can say names, but one of the biggest tech company in the world to look at this. One of the biggest financial data company in the world to see if they have a solution. And this startup would just have a few people. And we gave the 3 of them the same input. We said, this is the history of chat we have with our clients. And we want you to analyze this data and try to come up with what can we do with it. And this was fascinating because the biggest IT companies that had compute power like nobody else can have, they had like 500 data scientists, but they didn't have the expert knowledge of our product or the financial product, right? They were a big tech company, but not a financial technology company. So if in the chat we talk about Apple, they will not know if it's a fruit or if it's a stock price, right? So just using an example. So they were good technically, but not in the product sense. The second one was something, a very large company, but in the financial sector, so they could understand the product. But because they were very large, they were quite slow at adapting to change, right? So into a time compressed period to do a pilot program and to be able to evolve through the data input that we were giving them, we saw that they were making progress, but not as fast as a small company. So that was the power of the small fintech companies, that they understood the problem very well because it was an ex-trader coming from a different bank, so we knew the problem. They understood the technology very well because they had data scientists within that small team who are very good, and they could react very quickly to change because they were nimble and they could adapt very fast to change. And so we learned a lot from that experiment because originally you want to go with the big guys because they say, oh, safe bet, there are big companies, have 400 data scientists, they should know what they're talking about. But at the end, we went with a small company because, reacting to change was very critical. We had to take a bet on them to make sure they continue to exist in 5 years' time. We didn't invest in them at the time. I don't remember why, but what we did is to help them to get other clients, to say, if we are the only client for you, and we are client number 2, I think. So, but it's not enough for you to succeed. You need at least 5 clients. So how can we use our network for you to find other clients? And we help them to do that, to help them to scale and to do that. But we took a bet on them. And I think, back to your question, this is what very rewarding experience for us and for them. It because we did the test and we took a risk, but it was a calculated risk for a specific project. And we gave the chance to a very small startup to rise and work with a large bank, and now several large banks. And now they are doing quite well.
Sounds like a beautifully executed startup
Yes.
idea. A few people could make a significant change.
And a lot of the time, it's for me, it's why in the bank I tried to. My role was to try to work with fintech companies and to include bring them to the bank. We saw that again and again and again. Is like if you try to develop in house, yes, you have your own IP, etc. But the time to change is quite slow. Fintech company by design will be more nimble than a larger bank, and they can adapt to change very quickly. And in the environment where we start to see around data, AI, generative AI, you need to be able to react really fast. There is new technology, new tools coming out every single day. So partnering with fintech company, even early stage fintech companies, can be a game changer because it's going to increase the speed and you are going to learn a lot from them.
We've spoken a bit throughout the conversation about data, and I want to slowly get into that subject. As many people say, data is the king, especially given GenAI that's relying heavily on how good is your data. And unfortunately, in many organizations, data may be in not a good shape.
No.
So
it's shocking. It's shocking from the inside. These are battles that for
So
for a long
given
time,
your
yes.
experience, what you've seen in banks or fintechs, hopefully, fintechs are good with this. I don't know. What is one thing that they could address, first, and why?
You can split into two sides. Like what is fascinating is on the banking side, finance, banks have a lot of data, huge amount of data, but all the transactions where they do with the clients, the trading price of all the instruments, plenty of data. The problem is they don't get the value from those data. Those data are stored in different systems. In one of the places I work for, we had 8 data store for very similar transaction were stored in 8 different data store. And we were not getting the value from those. So I think that the first thing is to try to even before you want to clean your data, and this I agree, a lot of the times the data is not clean enough. You want to try to see what problem you can solve with the data you have before you go on by external data. Try to shape up the program, try to do some pilots, try to analyze some of the data that you have. Then the second stage will be, okay, now that I know I can do something with it, and maybe you don't have 100% of the scope and you need to bring external data to that. And we'll come back to that. Then you have to clean it and to bring it back to the user. And then you can start to realize the value thing. And you can start small. It's just like everything I said so far is you can start small and then grow through it, right? A lot of, just to be more concrete, to give you a simple example, lots of banks will have transaction data for regulatory reporting, for risk management activity, for valorization of their portfolio, for compliance checks, for monitoring that your trader don't do anything that they are not supposed to do. But they will store all those same transactions 5 different times for just to get a different outcome. So it costs 5 times more, and it's the same kind of data set. So if you can have a good vision first to say, okay, I want to use this data to check if my trader are doing something they should not do, to also do risk management, to also report this data to regulators, then you can really reduce the cost, get some saving, and then you can reinvest that to create product out of it. And that's why I saw that many times. Now I moved to a tech company with data focus, and we try to use public data for people to do that and face the same, challenge, but we create an opportunity from it. Is like people, a lot of the times they give up too quickly. They will say, "Oh my God, we have like 5 data stores. The data is not clean, etc." Where I work now, we consume data from 65 different places. We clean the data, we make it unified, and we present it to a very simple way for people to digest, right? And then it's the wow factor. But we did a boring job for them to some extent, right? And that's, a lot of people are afraid to do that because they say, "Oh my God, it's like, you arrive to a messy kitchen and you're like, I have to clean everything. I do it tomorrow," right? It's sometimes you have to take the step to say, if you want to get the benefit out of it, you have to do the boring job first, and then you will get the benefit out of it.
Yes. So it sounds like it's not always about amount of data and the quality of data, but sometimes it could be that it's excessive amount of data that hurts you on your bottom line because you're storing it in too many places.
And so this you have to be careful, right? So I talked to a guy at Google, for example, a few years ago, was saying for Google, they store everything they can about you, everything you type, everything you search. So they will. So it's a strategy for them to store everything. And I don't think, like on the banking side, that's not what I'm saying, and I'm correct with you, because if not, the cost will be way too high, right? So I did a lot of work in the foreign exchange markets. So in the foreign exchange market, if you have like hundreds of dealers who make prices, so if you want to buy exchange euro against dollar or British pound against euro, and those prices are updated every microsecond or millisecond. If you try to ingest all those data points from all the producer of data, you are going to fill a data room like very quickly, and right. So you have to be able to select what problem you want to solve, and for that, which amount of data you need to store. All right, and I think you're pretty correct there. Don't store everything because you know. It's like those old people who collect everything in their backyard and then pile up. Right? You have to do what I think is relevant to you and what will solve a problem for you. And that's why it's good to step back, have that vision, and that vision helps you to have a great data model of what problem is going to solve for you, and then brings that value back to you.
I'd like to wrap up the discussion with GenAI.
Yeah.
There are no episodes in this podcast where we don't touch GenAI. Probably that's happening across everybody in the media. So you've seen how industry is adapting and changing, and the new fintechs are emerging. In your opinion, are there any critical blind spots that fintechs and banks are completely ignoring right now?
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity and a challenge at the same time on GenAI for banking. And same thing, my experience is more investment banking and not retail banking. So I'll speak about that part of investment banking. It's very hard at this point to create a business case of how much revenue I will get from a GenAI solution versus the investments that I need to make. And that's why a lot of investment banks struggle like crazy to launch GenAI projects, because that's the first question from their management they will get. Well, you want some money or budget to do something. What is he going to do for me? Right? Like how much more revenue I'm going to create? And we don't have these answers today. And that's a challenge, but I think that's a mistake that we make, because if we don't embark to that journey, somebody else did, right? So there was a good quote. I was in a kind of a GenAI breakfast meeting a few weeks ago, and one of the speakers was giving, people are afraid because they don't know about GenAI, what he can do or cannot do, and they say, well, is he going to replace me or replace my job? And he said, well, it's not AI who is going to replace your job. It's somebody using AI who is going to replace your job, right? And we start to decide in investment banking right now. If you look at some of the high-frequency trading firm, and it's public, so that's why I can quote them. If you look at the profits that Jane Street makes in 2024 last year, compared to the profit of a big bank like Goldman Sachs or pick one, you will see how far those high-frequency trading firms who are using AI and GenAI a lot are making compared to a traditional investment banking position. So I think that's why for me it's critical for investment banks to enter that space quite quickly, even if they don't know yet. And that's why it's my journey in innovation was that is sometimes you don't know where you are going, but you know you have to get there. You have to do something around that. And you can pilot some of the use case. And I will give you one or two for me, and I see from asset management community, for example, every bank send research paper to their clients every single day. And it's not, one research document could be 60 pages, right? So what the American administration done last week, right? And you can write about it every single day for 60 pages. But they receive that. So a large pension fund, a large asset manager will receive that from their top 20 banks every single day, right? They cannot read 60 page times 20 every day, right? But they can use GenAI to translate that information to them into a more concise format and to try to generate some insight from it, to say out of those 20 reports, 18 of them think that the economy is going to go to a recession, but 2 of them think it's not going to go because such and such region, right? So this is extremely powerful technology, but you have to pilot different use cases, and some of them will give you great benefits, and some other probably will say, well, it's too expensive from the benefits that we can have.
It's interesting. I will check it after the recording. I'm just curious. It's interesting if there are any cases left from the time when the industrial world and world in general was switching over to electricity, and how it was sold to business owners, because back then electricity was something like GenAI for businesses now. Like how can you predict that in 100 years that will be so powerful and will power the whole manufacturing world, right? So I think at least for me, the analogy is like that. Like how it's really hard to quantify innovation in a sense. You cannot create financial model because you just don't have the precedent in particular industry.
In our industry, the challenge people face in something in investment banking is we already have a lot of structured data. So people say, well, I don't need the GenAI because all my data that I use is already structured in database, and I have too many of them and I don't know what it is. Right? But GenAI, it's both way, right? You can go from structured data to unstructured data. So same thing, we can have something generate a morning call report for you to say, listen, this is all the price move during the night in Asia, and boom, you arrive in the morning, you can read that paragraph generated automatically. So going from structure to unstructured, or the other way around, like the example of research, going from unstructured to structured data. So I think people don't realize yet how powerful it is. And that's why I'm passionate about it, because I think the finance industry is lagging behind other industry sector on the adoption of GenAI. And it's strange because it's an industry who have a lot of capital, who have a lot of power to be able to invest in things, but currently it's running behind.
Well, on that, we're going to finish the discussion. Thank you very much, Stephane, for being a guest.
Thank you, Alex. It was great to be with you.
And for the listeners, thanks a lot for staying with us. And if you enjoyed the conversation, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, leave the review on the podcast platform that you're listening. And see you next time.
Bye-bye.